Good morning and welcome. If you're visiting with us, thank you for spending part of your weekend here with us at Burnside Christian Church. We pray that your time together with us will be a blessing and it'll be a great way to start off your week. If you would, please open up your Bibles to the book of Judges. We are in this sermon series through the book of Judges, where we've been studying about these military leaders that God raises up. He calls them judges. And they are intended to help rescue Israel from their captivities, from the oppression. And it just so happens, now we are in what I believe to be one of the most famous lives of a judge to ever exist. That is, we're studying the life of Samson. People who go to church faithfully know about Samson. People who don't go to church faithfully know about Samson. Samson was one of those that as a kid, I remember reading the story of Samson. I looked up to Samson because, man, he was this powerhouse of strength, right? And what kid doesn't want to be like Samson? You know, ripping gates off, killing people with the jaw of a donkey bone. I mean, great stuff, right? Well, as I've gotten to be a little bit older and a little bit, maybe a little bit more studied in God's Word, I've realized that there's some problems with Samson. But that's also why I've entitled the entire series, Broken People, Faithful God. Because Samson is definitely, as we're going to soon see, broken. But God is going to use him in very special and mighty ways. So I was thinking about this. How do I introduce Judges chapter 14 to you that you'll kind of understand where we're going? And I landed on this illustration on Monday, and I didn't like it. I was trying to find something else, and I found nothing else. So here we are. Are you ready? I have to start off this illustration by asking, who in here is a fan of Star Wars? Raise them high. Okay, that's good. Who has never seen an episode of Star Wars in your life? Wow. Okay, well, I hate to do this to you, but spoiler alert, we're going to reveal some very key information in the saga of Star Wars. But listen, folks, the movies have been out for 40 years. And if you haven't seen them by now, well, welcome to the party, right? So, okay, going back to episode 3 of Star Wars. This is so nerdy, and I apologize. Going back to episode 3 of Star Wars, we have this Jedi trainer. His name is Obi-Wan. And he is strong in the Force, and he's a mighty warrior, he's a mighty Jedi, and he has a Padawan, an apprentice that he's training named Anakin Skywalker. It's a long series of events, but he is now training Anakin to become this Jedi Master. And because it was revealed that long ago that Anakin could be the one. He could be the chosen one that would make the difference for the Jedi Order. That he was the one who was going to bring balance to the Force, right? Well, the scene I'm getting ready to show you is how Darth Vader comes into existence. Spoiler alert, Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader. And Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. Well, this scene that I'm getting ready to show you is the pivotal scene, the pivotal moment when Anakin finally makes the transformation. He's not there yet, but it's the thing that's going to tip him over the edge to become Darth Vader. And Anakin in this scene, when he's supposed to be this wonderful defender of truth and justice, and he's supposed to be everything good about a Jedi, in this scene, the student is going to try to attack and kill his master. Can we kill some lights? Can we watch this scene? And I have edited it. For some of our younger viewers here, you'll see what I'm talking about. But let's play the video and we'll enjoy some Star Wars.
This is the end for you, my master. I have the high ground. You underestimate my power. Don't try it.
Okay, so there's the scene. Anakin survives, and he's picked up by the Lord, whatever his name is, the evil emperor guy, and he's healed, but he is transformed from this moment on as Darth Vader, and he wears the black suit and the mask. You know, the whole thing, because he got really messed up in this battle with Obi-Wan Kenobi. So what does that have to do with Judges chapter 14? Here's what it has to do with Judges chapter 14. Could you sense the frustration and the disappointment in Obi-Wan's voice after he had to do what he did not want to do? After he had to destroy Anakin and said, "You were the chosen one. You were supposed to be the solution to the problem." Well, what do you do when the solution to the problem becomes the problem to the solution? That's what this morning's title is all about as we deal with Samson. Samson was supposed to be born. He was prophesied to be the great deliverer of Israel against the enemies of the Philistines. He was supposed to be the solution. But the solution becomes the problem. And that's where we're going to pick up our text here in Judges chapter 14 in just a minute. I want to do some review for those who may not have been here last week. Last week we were in Judges 13 and we learned about the birth of Samson, and it was a joyous time. Manoah and his wife have been unable to have kids, and Jesus appears to them in the Old Testament and declares that, guess what, your wife's going to become pregnant, and you guys are going to have a baby boy. And he's going to be a Nazirite from birth. We'll talk about that in just a minute. You see, for 40 years since the time Samson was born, the Philistines have been a problem. They've been a thorn in the side of Israel. And now comes along Samson. He's born. But Samson is different than the other judges that we've learned about so far. Samson is unique. Samson is an enigma. He is a walking contradiction. He was a complicated person. He was empowered by the Spirit of God, but he followed the appetites of his flesh. He was strong before men, but Samson was weak when it came to women. He could easily conquer the enemies around him, but he could not defeat the enemy that lived inside of him. And yet again, I believe that is why this book of Judges is so practical for you and for me. Have not each of us felt the weight of our own temptations and our own failures? Are we not all at times walking contradictions? Professing to love Jesus Christ and follow Him to the very ends of the earth on one hand. And then on the other hand, giving into our own selfish desires. Even somebody who was as devout as Simon Peter, who professed, "Never will I leave you. I will follow you even if it means my death," denied Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed. And as we open to Judges chapter 14, we're not told anything about Samson's childhood. We're told about his birth, but we don't know what kind of kid he was. All we know from Judges chapter 13 that we learned last week is that his parents early on were committed to raising him to know the Lord and to follow the Lord. And they were told that Samson was to be a Nazirite from birth. Just some more review from last week. A Nazirite comes from the Hebrew word meaning separate. And that's what this Nazirite vow was intended to do. It was intended to be a separation of a child from the rest of the world. That he was supposed to live differently and look differently. That meant no fruit of the vine, not grape juice, not wine, no raisins, not strong drink, nothing like that. It meant you couldn't shave your head. You had to let your hair grow. And it meant no contact with dead things. And by the time that we come to Judges chapter 14, well, voila, Samson's grown up. And parents, isn't that about how fast it is as you're raising your kids? You turn the page and boom, your kids are grown. So all of that is an important backdrop now as we focus on Judges chapter 14, because as we come to Judges chapter 14, we're going to find 4 actions that Samson commits that just sends his life off the rails. Puts him in a ditch, spiritually speaking. And I just want to address the elephant in the room a little early on. There may be some who are present here this morning, and you're here, and your spiritual life is in shambles, it's not where it needs to be or where you want it to be, and it's because you're guilty of doing one of these four things that Samson has done. Listen, there's hope for you, and we're going to get to that at the end of the sermon. But I want to talk about this because there's lessons that we learn from Samson's failures. And the first thing that he did, the first action that he takes that leads to the spiral downward devastation of his life is that Samson chose to walk by sight, not by faith. As Christ followers, we've been called to walk by faith, trust God, go where He says to go, following Him faithfully. Samson's choosing to look around him and follow what he thinks looks good, sounds good, feels good. Okay? He's walking by sight, not by faith. Let's read Judges chapter 14, verses 1 through 4. Then Samson went down to Timnah, and he saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. So he came back and he told his father and mother, "Hey, I saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. Now, therefore, go get her for me as a wife." His father and his mother said to him, "Is there no woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all of our people that you would go and take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me, for she looks good to me." See that? He's walking by sight, not by faith. He's seeing what looks good and appealing to his senses, and he's ignoring totally where God would lead him and direct him for his life. And it's going to start off and be a disaster. Verse 4. However, his father and his mother did not know that it was of the Lord, for he was seeking an occasion against the Philistines. Now at that time, the Philistines were ruling over Israel. Let me just start here this morning because Samson's life, which will soon go off the rails, how did we get there, right? Well, what you need to understand about Samson is that Samson had a blessed childhood, okay? A lot of times if you experience something in your life and it causes you to go to a counselor or a therapist, they're probably going to ask you about your past. They're probably going to try to figure out if there's something to blame in your life that we can point to that made your life go off the rails as it is. And what you need to understand is that Samson has no one to blame for how his life ends up the way that it does. He had a blessed childhood. How do I know that? Go back to Judges chapter 13, verse 24. It tells us that. The woman gave birth to a son and named him Samson. And the child grew up, and guess what? The Lord blessed him. He had a blessed childhood. He had everything that he could ever want as a kid. He had a loving home, good parents who protected him and provided for him. He was raised to know the Lord. He had everything going. He had a blessed childhood. The decisions that he's making now are nobody's fault except his own. And maybe, can I just gently speak into your life and pose the question, could some of the stuff you're dealing with not be anybody else's fault, but maybe partly your own? Our text says in verse 1 that Samson goes down to Timnah. Let me just show you a map real quick. You probably can't see it very well. Timnah is the one in the middle with the circle around the dot, and Zorah is where he grew up. Zorah is 4 miles east of Timnah, and yet our scripture says he went down. Why is that? Because it's talking about topographically. Zorah is in the mountain region. So he's in the mountains. He's high up in elevation. To travel down to Timnah, he has to go down. Now clearly, this text is describing topical location of where Samson was at, but I think there's some spiritual implications as well with that phrase. As soon as he's out of the chute, he goes down to Timnah, all right, and he's going to go down hard, spiritually speaking. And this is quite common. When you hang out at the wrong places, you associate with the wrong people. And it says that Samson found a woman who, to put it in today's vernacular, was smoking hot. He was looking with his eyes and not his head. So he goes to his dad and he says, "I want her, arrange the marriage, make it happen." And listen to his father's response. We read it already, but let's go back to verse 3. His father and mother said to him, "Is there no woman, the daughters of your relatives or among all of our people, that you would go take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" But Samson said to his father, "Get her for me, for she looks good to me." Let me just be real clear what's happening, because some people would point to this and be like, look, this is a proof text of why we should not enter marriage with race. These verses, you got to understand, Manoah and his wife are not against the Philistines because they have a different skin color. They're against the Philistines because they serve a different God. We're talking about a differences in religion, not a differences in race. Okay? There's one race, the human race. But it's super important to marry somebody who has the same core values, the same beliefs, the same worldview that you have about who God is and how man got here. Samson's dad objects to his desire to marry this Philistine woman. And let me just say this to you this morning. Some of you are in relationships that are not Christian. The person that you're dating is not a Christian. And your parents object to that. And can I just say something that's a little bit hard to hear, a little bit tough to swallow, a little bit hard in the present, but will help you in the future? Your parents are right to object. Your parents are right to object. I would offer this suggestion to you. If you are a professing Christian who is dating someone who is non-believer, dump them. Break up with them. It's going to hurt, but not as bad as it would hurt if you had a life with them down the road. Evangelism dating is an enormous failure. You can't be like, well, I'm going to change them. I'm going to bring them to church with me. I'm going to help win them to Christ. That's a terrible way to try to win lost souls for the Lord. Your life will be miserable if you are wanting to follow Christ and your eventual spouse does not. You're going to be heading in completely two different opposite directions. Even choosing to marry someone who attends a different denomination of church than you is not a good idea. Because there's always going to be a discussion. Well, whose church are we going to today? Are we even going to church today? Find someone who's committed and believes the same things about God and about Jesus that you do, and then commit together and be committed to that church. Now let me just say, and I recognize what verse 4 says. Some of you are reading verse 4 and you're like, well, maybe it's God's will for me to be with this non-Christian. Maybe God has some plans in store. Well, let me just be really clear about what verse 4 is saying so there's no confusion. God was super clear on His instructions to the Israelites. In Exodus chapter 34, and repeated it again in Deuteronomy chapter 7, God commands the Israelites not to intermarry with anybody who didn't believe in Jehovah God. Now, do you think here in Judges chapter 14 that God's changed His mind and He thinks it's a good idea? No. What verse 4 is saying is this: God is sovereign. He is in control of everything. And this is a reminder that when you do not allow God to rule over you, that God may have to overrule you. Now, God is going to work all things together for good, even in Samson's poor choices. God works all things together for good, even in the sinful choices that you and I make to benefit God's purposes. But listen, if you would have just avoided making the sinful choice in the first place, you would have avoided the pain that inevitably comes as a result of making the sinful choice. Every sinful choice you make comes with consequences. And this choice that Samson is choosing, this Philistine woman, he has free will, he can do it. But it's going to lead to pain, and it's going to lead to problems. For this Philistine woman that Samson will eventually marry leads to conflict, betrayal, and sorrow that could have well been avoided if Samson would have just committed himself to God and doing what God wanted him to do in the first place. I mean, let me ask this question. Could God have accomplished His purposes for Samson and the Philistines had Samson not chosen to marry this Philistine woman? Absolutely. So here's what it boils down to Samson, and I think here's the point of application for you and me. Sometimes we are ruled by our desires and not by God's word. This point of application, I think, isn't just about romantic relationships and who you should be with. It's about how easily our hearts are drawn to our fleshly desires, what makes us feel good, what is going to make me look good, what's going to be good for me in the short term. And Samson's life is characterized by choosing by what looks good, tasted good, and felt good. He cared very little about what God or his parents had to say about it. And when you and I choose to follow what looks good, tastes good, or feels good, and we completely ignore what God has in store for our lives, you better believe that's an action that's going to lead you eventually in the ditch upside down, spiritually speaking. Second action that will derail your spiritual life. First one, walking by sight and not by faith. Sure way. Second action that's going to lead you astray is disregarding God. That's what Samson does here. Flat out disregard for God. Look at verses 5 through 9. Then Samson went down to Timnah with his father and his mother and came as far as the vineyards of Timnah. And behold, a young lion came roaring toward him. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him mightily, so that he tore him, as one would tear a young goat through, though he had nothing in his hand. But he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. So he went down, he talked to the woman, and she looked good to Samson. I just am amazed at these two verses here. I love how the author Samuel is trying to make it relatable. He's like, yeah, he killed this lion, similar to how you'd rip a young goat in two. And I'm like, I've never ripped a young goat in two before. Has anybody in here ever ripped? He's trying to make it relatable, but totally over my head. But the point is that Samson is following again his fleshly desires and has no regard for what God has called him to do. Verse 8. When he returned later to take her, he turned aside to look at the carcass of the lion, and behold, a swarm of bees and honey were now in the body of the lion that he killed. So he scraped the honey into his hands. He went on, eating it as he went. When he came to his father and mother, he gave them some of it, and they ate it. But he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey out of the body of a lion. So these verses detail how Samson just blatantly disregards what God had called him to do. Remember, Samson was a what? Nazirite. He made a promise to God, a vow. And he was under this Nazirite vow. And these verses detail how Samson broke two of the three requirements of the Nazirite vow. The first requirement of the Nazirite vow, of course, he was not allowed to consume anything from the fruit of the vine. And yet, isn't it interesting that verse 5 details Samson going to a vineyard of Timnah? Now, he's clearly alone in this vineyard, because his parents don't know anything about the lion. The lion's attacking him. He's not like he's killing this lion to save his family. He's there by himself in this vineyard. Best case scenario is Samson is flirting with temptation. He's walking through the grapevines. He's looking at it. He's tempting. He's toying with temptation. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is he's choosing to go there in order to consume some form of the fruit of the vine. So he's breaking, or being tempted to break at least, vow number 1. According to verse 9, he had taken honey from the corpse of a lion. Again, I would remind you of his vow that as a Nazirite, he would not be allowed to touch a corpse. So reaching into the corpse of a dead lion is something that would totally break his vow. So let's recap real quick up to this point. Samson is morally defiled. He's been lusting after a Philistine chick, wanting to make her his wife. Samson is relationally defiled. He's refusing to listen to the advice of his parents, who are encouraging him not to marry this woman. And now he's ceremonially defiled, breaking two of the requirements that separate him from everyone else. All of that to say this. Here is a Nazirite who is not taking his commitment to God very seriously. And for Samson, here's why he's breaking his Nazirite vow. It's just not important to him. There's other things in life that he'd rather do. And at one time, maybe his vow was important to him, but not now. Can you see the application pretty quickly and easily? No doubt, you're here. You've made a commitment to Christ probably in your life, maybe when you were a kid. For me, it was when I was 11 years old. Are you following through on your commitment to follow Jesus Christ? How important is it to you? Have the lines become blurry that once were so clear? That when you first made the decision to follow Jesus Christ, there were certain activities, certain words, certain movies, certain websites that were clearly off limits. You had boundaries that you would not cross. But now, the further along you get in your journey of life and the more follower of Christ you become a little more lax in your rules. I think that's what's happening here for Samson. I believe that as he was a kid, he was dedicated, devoted, but the longer it has gone on, he's become a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more independent, and now he's doing things that he didn't do once before. He's totally disregarding God. There's clear signs that life for Samson is derailing in a serious way. He's walking by sight, not by faith, and he's disregarding the things of God. Here's the third action that Samson did that derailed his life. Samson, it's going to seem weird, Samson had no friends. Returning to our text, look at verses 10 and 11 of Judges 14. It says, "Then his father went down to the woman, and Samson made a feast there, for the young men customarily did this. When they saw him, they brought 30 companions to be with Samson." In these two verses, I want you to notice first what's there, and then secondly to notice what's not there. First, here's what's there. There's a feast. The Hebrew word for feast here that is used is a word that is used to describe a drinking celebration. So once again, a Nazirite, he's supposed to abstain from strong drink, and this dude's having like a beer bash. It's a bachelor party. And so this Nazirite has a drinking party, and notice his dad is with him. Why is that? Commentators, scholars are divided on this. One scholar that I read gave the best, I believe, explanation. It says, perhaps his father was there to reach out to his son and future daughter-in-law in a last-ditch effort to stop this marriage from taking place, because he couldn't, in good conscience, sanction this union. It's a way of saying, please, son, please don't do this. So that's what's there. But I want you to notice what's not there. Because did you notice there are 30 Philistine men that are brought to Samson to provide companionship for him? They had to get 30 guys to show up who would agree to be a part of Samson's wedding celebration. Samson doesn't know these guys. These guys are brought off the street to be in the groom's party. So here's my question. Where's Samson's friends? In Jewish weddings, there were a group of men who were the friends of the bridegroom. Jesus mentions it in Matthew chapter 9 as he's teaching about fasting. So where are Samson's friends? This is a celebration. He's supposed to have his family and his friends with him. This suggests to me, I believe, that Samson didn't have any friends. He's isolated himself at every possible turn. He doesn't have the male companionship, the male help, the male accountability that he needs in his life. And one thing we learn about Samson's story is he's a loner. There is no record of him having any help with any of the battles that he's fighting. He's fighting them on his own. And men, there are too many of us who are fighting battles on our own. We don't have friends. We don't have companionship. We don't have accountability. Ladies, you seem to excel at that. You seem to have companionship, and you've got girlfriends that you are all the time talking with. Men, we are loners, typically. We need to do better. Because listen to what it says in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 1. He who separates himself seeks his own desire. He quarrels against all sound wisdom. That describes Samson right here, right now. He separates himself. He's following what he wants. He has nobody who's giving him advice or help. And the advice that he's getting from his parents, he's like, nope, I don't want your advice. I know better than you. He's isolated himself from all friendship and accountability. And he's raging against all sound judgment that people would provide. And if that describes you, if you don't have a group of Christian friends to help you fight your battles, if you don't have a group of Christian people, if you're not a part of the herd but you're on the outskirts, then you're easy pickings for the enemy. Satan is a roaring lion seeking to devour somebody. And a lion goes after the gazelle or the zebra that is on the fringes of the herd, isolated from the rest of them. And if you're a Christian who's isolated, you're in danger of being devoured. On your phones, one of the things that I love about technology, and it's also something that I hate about technology, have you ever been texting somebody and autocorrect thinks it knows better, and so it replaces the word that you're trying to spell with something that you didn't mean to say, and you accidentally hit send before you could change it? Has that ever happened to anybody else? Okay. But that's a huge blessing sometimes to have that autocorrect, because my spelling's not great. So if there's words that I'm trying to spell, it's sometimes very helpful. If I start typing in the word, I'm like, I don't know how to finish that. And autocorrect provides 3 options of what it is it thinks I'm trying to say. And so in that sense, it's very helpful to select the right option. Wouldn't it be great if in life you had a spell check? That when you were faced with a bad choice that you were getting ready to make, something would pop up and be like, you may not want to do that. Let me give you 3 options to choose from that would be better. Wouldn't that be a great thing to have? Listen, you do have that. And it's called friendship. Real friends do exactly that for you in your life. Your friends will see you walking down a road, and they're going to come to you in love and say, look, I know you, and I love you enough to get in your face and tell you, choose another option. And Samson didn't have that. 3 actions that led to Samson's spiritual downfall. He walked by sight, not by faith. He disregards God. He had no friends. And finally, Samson played games with sin. In our remaining verses of Judges chapter 14, we find Samson enjoying his bachelor party with his provided 30 Philistine companions, and he makes a wager with them. He makes a bet with them. Samson offers a riddle. He's like, hey, if you guys can solve this riddle, then I'll give you each a change of clothes. But if you can't solve this riddle within a week, then you each have got to give me a change of clothes. A month's worth of clothing would be good by today's standards, and it was certainly unheard of in that day. So here's the riddle that Samson poses to him. He says, out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. So after 4 days of not being able to solve the riddle, these 30 companions go to Samson's wife, and they threaten her and her family. Verse 15 says, you better get your husband to tell you the answer, and then you better tell us the answer, or we're going to burn you with fire, and we're going to burn your dad's household with fire. Can I just say, this is the kind of people that maybe you don't want at your wedding, right? So Samson's wife goes to Samson and cries on him and lays the guilt trip of a lifetime on him. Oh, you don't love me. If you loved me, you would tell me the answer to your riddle. And look what Samson says in verse 16. I haven't even told my parents the answer to the riddle. You think I'm going to tell you? That right there is a problem in a marriage. Did you catch it? It's very subtle. What does verse 16 imply? The implication is that Samson trusts his parents more than he trusts his wife. Listen, husbands, wives, if the first person you go to are your parents instead of your spouse, you have a problem. The Bible commands us to leave our father and mother and cleave to our spouse. Somebody needed to hear that this morning, I'm convinced. But continuing on with our text, Samson finally gives in to his wife's pleading, tells his wife the answer to his riddle. Of course, it's the honey that he gathered out of the lion. And she quickly takes that information back to the 30 companions so they can answer the riddle. And verse 18, the men of the city said to Samson on the 7th day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey? What's stronger than a lion? And Samson said to them, if you have not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. I've heard a lot of terms of endearment given to wives. Sweetie, baby cakes, honey. I've never heard, nor do I plan to use, heifer. So this marriage is not off to a good start. His wife is crying. He doesn't trust his wife. He trusts his parents more. He has 30 men who wants to kill his wife and his father-in-law, and now he's calling his wife a cow. What I want you to notice is that Samson makes a joke of the sin that he committed before the Lord. He violated his vow. He touched something dead that he was not supposed to touch, and now it becomes a game. Now it becomes a riddle. Now it becomes a joke. It's bad enough that you disobeyed God, but it takes a special kind of callousness to make a mockery of it before God. I think this is human tendency, though, isn't it? When we're confronted with our sins, we want to downplay them. We want to shrug them off and be like, well, there's other people that are worse than I am. And when you live in a way where your sin is overlooked and you begin to not feel bad about what you've done, that's a bad place to be. So Samson goes off, finishing the rest of the story. He slaughters 30 men. He takes their clothing and their riches in order to pay off a foolish bet that he had made with the very people. Keep in mind, these are the very people that he was supposed to conquer and vanquish from the land. And now he's making deals with them, and now he's giving them riches, and now he's giving them clothes. Do you see that the solution has become the problem? Samson wants to be a deliverer for the people. And here in chapter 14, he's pretty terrible at it. He was too wrapped up in serving himself. So where does all this lead? We got some good news. You ready for some good news? Here it is. Thankfully, your hope and my hope is not in Samson. He's not our deliverer. And aren't you thankful he's not? We have one deliverer, and he's the greatest. His name is Jesus. And he's a deliverer who was totally different than Samson. While Samson wallowed in temptation and kind of surrounded himself with it, Jesus resisted temptation in Matthew chapter 4. While Samson misused his power to serve himself and to benefit others around him, immediate family, to get honey, and so, Jesus never misuses his power. He always used his power to serve somebody else. Samson didn't take sin very seriously. He's making jokes. He's making riddles about it. Jesus took sin so seriously that he was willing to die for yours and mine. Samson asked and ultimately surrendered his life so that he would kill 3,000 Philistines. Jesus sacrificed his life so that he could take away the sins of the world, past, present, and future. Samson's life warns us. Christ's life saves us. So here's the reality check for you this morning. If your life is not where you want it to be spiritually speaking, if you're in danger of going off the rails, have you done one of these four things? If you have, or if you are in the verge of just falling apart altogether, here is the good news for you. Jesus wants to deliver you. He wants to rescue you. He wants to walk with you once again. Are you living your life more like Samson? Or are you following Jesus and trying to live more like him? Are you part of the problem, compromising with the world, holding hands with the world? Or are you part of the solution of pointing lost people to a gracious God? Let's not waste our calling. Let's be faithful and committed to God's purposes. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to offer our song of decision. Would you please stand with me today? I'm going to pray, and then we'll get ready to sing a song of decision.